Okay, we'll start, I think. Good evening. This is December 15th, 2021. This is a planning board meeting for the town of Newbury. So as a preliminary matter, my name is Pete Pecos. I'm the chair for the Newbury Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Planning board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Larry's not with us, right, Martha?
That's correct.
Okay, George Morris?
Yes.
Leslie Matthews. Thank you, George. Leslie Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you, Leslie. Woody Knight?
He's here. Woody, you're muted.
I'm muted now.
Thank you, Woody. Mary Stone.
Yes.
Hello, Mary. Town staff, when I call your names, please respond in the affirmative. Martha Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you, Martha. Emily Noble?
Yes.
Thank you, Emily. Town council, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brian Winter?
Brian Winter is present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ryan. Anticipated speakers, presenters on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Mark B.
He is on his way.
Okay. Tom W.
Tom Woodruff is here.
Thank you, Tom. Robert R.
Robert Rosine is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Eric M.
Eric McLean is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Dale M.
Dale Myers is here.
Thank you, Dale. Steve W.
Here, Steve Weah. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill M.
She's here. She's muted.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it was taking me a long time. Jill Mann here for DePiro property. Thank
Great.
you.
Mark D.
I don't see him here.
Okay, Tom Z.
Here.
Great, thanks. Good evening. This is December 15th. The open meeting for the Newbury Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until April 1, 2022. This order suspends the requirement that open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Newbury Planning Board is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the Planning Board's agenda, which can be found on the town's website and which identifies how the public may join. You may join us by going to http://zoom.us and entering meeting ID 832-7141-3056 or by calling 929-205-6099 and entering the meeting ID number when prompted. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference. The meeting is also being broadcast live through local access cable channel 9 on Zoom and at www.tnctv.org and recorded, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to the board members prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak and if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your intention after you have been called. Just some meeting guidelines. So before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except board members and staff, please remember to mute your computer with the mute button or on your phone with the *6 to toggle to mute or unmute when you are not speaking. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets or cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a manner that will allow us to generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any responses, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If board members wish to engage in discussions with other members, please do so through the chair. With regards to public comment, there will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during our public hearings. After board members have spoken, I will afford the public an opportunity to comment and or ask questions as follows. I will see questions and comments through the Zoom raise hand function. Video conference participants to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the gray hand that appears. Please ensure that your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the more functions next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in the Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone keypad. I will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they are listed, which is determined by the order in which people have clicked the raise hand function. Each participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address, and then ask any questions or make a comment. I will afford the applicant, participant, and or his or her representatives the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you've been given the floor for your questions. I will then continue down the list of those in the raise hand column, and again afford the participant, applicant, representative an opportunity to speak. Should there be any physical or electronic submittal of questions or concerns, they will be noted for the record, and again the participant, applicant, and representative will be afforded to the opportunity to speak if the issues raised have not yet been addressed. Each vote today, this evening, will be taken by roll call. Okay, so with that said, looking at our agenda, I see that our first appearance is going to be by Meridian Associates for the Governor Academy. This is a submission of a site plan modification application for modifications of a site of an approved site plan for the Parker River Environmental Studies Building, the PRESB, and related site improvements, including a new dock on the property owned by the Governor's Academy at 313 Newburyport Turnpike, map R, 15 lot 11, owner applicant, the Governor's Academy. Mark or Tom, who will be starting off for us?
Actually, Mr. Chair, we had a request since Mark Beaudry is on his way to be
Yes.
join the meeting, a request to flip our first two items. So perhaps put Rob Rosine first.
I would be more than happy to flip, Martha. Thank you. So we will hear from Waterstone Engineering for a submission of an A&R plan for lot line changes at 136 Main Street, map R41, lot 42A, and 140R Main Street, map R41 and lot 42. Applicant is Borrego Solar LLC. Owner is Ruthie Seri. Okay, Robert.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chair, Planning Board, and Ms. Taylor. I'm Robert Rosine from Waterstone Engineering. Tonight, we're here to submit an application for endorsement of a plan believed not to require approval. A little background on the project. Some of you folks might recall, I believe the approval for this project initially was in 2016. So some time ago, actually, no, I don't think that's right. 2016 was the DEP approval. I believe the 2017 was the town special permit approval. Since then, the project construction began in 2020, and it's essentially at 99% completion. And we're at a point now where some issues have come up with respect to NGrid, National Grid, and the interconnectivity that are going to require an additional point of access. So the most of that is not immediately relevant this evening, although it will be at some point in the future, in the near future, when we bring to the board a special permit, an application for a special permit amendment. This piece tonight is immediately relevant in that this is the big issue we're dealing with at this point is the conservation restriction, and does not allow an easement for this point of access that we're going to require. So we will be applying for a
Oops. Rob, you've frozen. I'm not quite sure if you can hear us.
Peter's talking, but
Yeah, Pete, we're not hearing you either.
I apologize, folks. Sometimes technology will do that to us. We're going to see if Bob's able to pop back in.
Oh.
Let's see if he'll reconnect with us. Give us just a sec.
And Mark Beaudry is now here.
Okay, so maybe what we will do until Bob comes in, we will,
Oops, here he comes.
okay, hold on, folks, before we change channels. Let's get him in. All right, he'll be right here.
Hey.
Hello, Rob, you're back.
All right, folks, boy, if it weren't for challenges with technology, there would be no technology at all. That was Zoom's way of telling me to take a breath. Sorry, folks.
Big
So
one.
what was the last piece we heard, Martha? Or
I think you were about to say you were making the submission because
Oh, geez, so early. Okay, all right, so where was I?
impact
so-
of this on the conservation restriction.
Okay, so we were, okay, I broached the conservation restriction issue. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So we will be applying for and this isn't through the town, this is through the state, a conservation restriction amendment to make that acceptable for the town, sorry, for the state and for the town presumably. The conservation restriction itself has to be essentially improved. It can't be a reduction. So because we're asking for an easement, that is a reduction. So the point of tonight's piece is essentially we're going to be adding additional land to the conservation trust. So what you have before you tonight is the addition of 1.2 acres of land from 136 Main Street that will be transferred to the 140R Main Street Conservation Trust, bringing that total number up to about 82 acres. And there will be a second part that will come to that. Again, that'll be later on. It's not immediately relevant tonight, but that will be there's an additional parcel across the street for about 7 additional acres. So the point of tonight essentially is just a simple lot line adjustment, but as part of a much larger, more complicated process of which you will be hearing from us yet again.
All right, thank you, Rob. Let me see if there's any questions from any board members at this time. George, any questions, sir?
I have no questions.
Wonderful, thank you. Leslie, any questions?
The only question I have is the additional acreage that you're looking for will be part of the solar farm itself or just part of an easement?
It will be part of the conservation restriction. And so the conservation restriction or the conservation trust currently holds about 80 acres. With this will bump it up to approximately 82, and then the extra additional will bring it up to about 89 in total. Of which that sum total, there is approximately 12 that is the solar facility itself. And then there's numerous easements across it. So there's the access easement off of Main Street. There will be a maintenance access, which is what this particular CR amendment is about, is the maintenance access from the rear through to the power lines. And then there's another easement as well. There is the utility corridor easement, which is already in existence. So 2 of the 3 easements that we need are there. And how this was not caught early on, unfortunately, is it predates me, but that is where we're at today.
And part of the easement has to do with the access coming off of Main Street?
It does not. All this easement will be for maintenance access to the interconnection point. And what that means is where the solar facility connects is to the high tension lines off of I-95,
Okay.
and so there is a point of interconnection into the N-grid transmission corridor that's at the rear of the property. It's where this 80 some acres abuts that transmission corridor. So we have to make access to that. And that's an N-Grid standard that somehow was not caught in the original N-Grid easement agreement. And in the final review, this was identified, which is unfortunate because it brings us back to some new permitting. So we'll be back in front of the state and through the town and through the et cetera for that. But it'll some additional time, but it'll happen.
So more to follow from Rob and company.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thanks for the
Right.
info.
Great, thanks, Leslie. Woody, anything at this point?
No, I don't have any questions.
Thank you, sir. Mary, anything at this point?
I don't.
Wonderful. I would entertain a motion to endorse.
So move.
Thank you, George, as a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you very much, Leslie. On the motion, any discussion, George?
None.
Thank you. Any discussion, Woody?
No.
Thank you. Any discussion, Leslie?
no,
No, great. Any questions or discussions from you, Mary? Great. On the motion, how do you vote, George?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Leslie, how do you vote?
yes,
Thank you. How do you feel, Mary?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And the chair will vote in favor as well. Okay, Rob, thank you very much. And I guess we'll be seeing you down the road a little bit.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Rob, I'll let you know. I'll let you know when the Mylar has been signed.
Thank you, Martha, for your help. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wonderful.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so I think we're going to be going back to Meridian Associates and Tom with regards to the Governor Academy submission of site plan.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, Martha.
It is a little after 7:15. We do have a public hearing that was scheduled to start at 7:15. So perhaps we might let people know that. And
That we will be starting that public hearing after we've just finished this business. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Martha. Mark, are you up?
Yes, sir. Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the board and Martha. My name is Mark Beaudry from Meridian Associates, and with me this evening also is Tom Woodruff, the Director of Facilities at the Governor's Academy. And if you recognize the surroundings behind me, I am actually in the lobby of town offices. So there's a big box outside Martha's door for, with the app for all of our plans and documents. So we met with the board back on November 17th, if you recall, and went through some proposed changes to the Parker River Environmental Studies building. And that's proposed on the campus. That was originally approved by the planning board back in 2018. And the subsequently extended by the board last summer. So there have been just really quickly some changes made to the building and the site that we wanted to come back before the board to get a modification to the original site plan approval. And you may recall also that we are also seeking now to get approval of the seasonal dock in the Parker River. So that is part of the submission. And we've clarified a couple things working with Martha since then that I think we had talked about a major modification that night, but really what it is we talked about a minor modification in rolling in the dock and doing it combined. We've been clarified with, we're working with Martha that it's actually a major modification that requires a public hearing. So because of the inclusion of the dock. So what we've kind of outlined in our cover letter to the board, a narrative. We do have some waivers that were similar to those requested before. We've got all kinds of plans and renderings and updated architecturals, the updated site plans, et cetera. So you may recall real quickly that there's been a relatively minor increase in square footage of the building permit as the programming changed. The decks got a little bigger, but a significant change is that the amount of pathways going down to the river from the building are significantly shorter in length, different materials. The steps going straight down from the building to the river have been eliminated. So there's a lot of positive changes. The building height has been reduced, et cetera. So as basically, you may recall it after a pretty significant value engineering process that occurred. And the part of the delay was that the school had to go back and get additional funding, which they now have in hand, which is great. So I think the purpose of this evening is simply to confirm that we have a complete application at this point so that we can schedule a public hearing that we anticipate hopefully would be in January to keep us on track. You may recall that the schedule is we're trying to get through modifications with both the Planning Board and Conservation Commission to allow a building permit to be applied for and obtained in say February, that would allow construction to start as soon as possible in the spring. So that's where we're at right now.
Wonderful, Mark. So tonight we'll be voting to accept your application and then we'll set a date for a public hearing. At this point, I would accept a motion to accept the application.
So moved.
Thank you, Leslie, for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, George, for a second. Any discussion on the motion, George?
None.
Wonderful. Any discussion, Woody?
None.
Wonderful. Any discussion, Leslie?
No.
Wonderful. Mary, any discussion?
No.
Okay, thank you. George, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Woody, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Leslie, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Wonderful. Mary, how do you feel?
Yes.
Wonderful. Chair's in favor as well. So let's pick a date. Martha, were we looking at maybe the 19th of January?
Yeah, given the holidays, that will give time for public notice, because it needs to be noticed at least 2 weeks ahead of time, and also for peer review to happen.
Okay.
So I would suggest the 19th instead of the 5th.
Okay, so the 19th, 7:15.
That would be wonderful.
Wonderful. Okay, I would now accept a motion to set a public hearing for this application for the 19th of January at 7:15 in the evening.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, George?
No.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, Woody?
None.
Thank you. Discussion, Leslie?
None.
Thank you. Mary, any discussion?
No.
Wonderful. George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Leslie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Mary, how do you feel?
Yes.
Wonderful. And chairs in favor. So we will set this hearing for the 19th of January at 7:15. Thanks very much, Mark and Tom.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and have wonderful holidays, everybody.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye-bye now.
Good night, and thank you, Martha.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we'd like to initiate a public hearing. This is a new public hearing for a special permit application for a ground-mounted solar PV installation at 75 Boston Road, which is the Newbury landfill map R36 lot 27. The applicant is Alliance Newbury 1 LLC. The owner is the town of Newbury. Who will be presenting for us? Martha.
So, if somebody needs to read the public hearing notice first.
Sure. So Leslie, could you do that for us?
Martha, can you put them up for me?
I can certainly try here. Bear with me for just a second.
I think it was an attachment sent out as well.
It was, here it is. All right, can you all see that?
Give it a sec.
Not yet.
There we go.
And I'll try to
Can
make
you
it
a little bit larger, Martha.
I'm trying, yes.
Beautiful.
How's that?
That's great.
Okay.
Town of Newbury Planning Board Public Hearing Notice. Residents of the town of Newbury and other interested persons, please note that on Wednesday, December 15th, 2021 at 7:15 p.m., the Newbury Planning Board will hold an online virtual public hearing via Zoom to consider a special permit application submitted by Alliance Newbury LLC for a proposed plus minus 582.4 set KWDC ground monitor solar photovoltaic installation on the Newbury landfill located at 75 Newbury, Boston Road, Newbury map, R36, lot 27, as shown on the drawings, entitled Newbury Landfill Solar Project Proposed 582.4 kW DC solar, prepared by Weston and Sampson Engineers and property owner, Town of Newbury, and the Planning Office, 12 Kent Way, Suite 101, Byfield, and may also be requested by emailing planningboard@townofnewbury.org for more information. To be heard on this application should appear at the time of and place designated herein. Excuse me. Interested persons may participate in the hearing from the computer, tablet, or smartphone at https://us02web.zoom.us J832714133056, or by telephone by calling 1-929-205-6099 US and using meeting ID number 832-7141-3056, or may watch the hearing live on local access cable channel 9 or at www.tnctv.org. The virtual meeting connection information will be included on the December 15th, 2021 Planning Board meeting agenda, which will be posted no less than 48 hours prior to the meeting. Peter Pecos, Chair, Newbury Planning Board.
Thank you very much, Leslie. So I'm going to ask that the applicant introduce their application team members who will be present tonight.
For Mr. Chairman, my name is Steve Weah with Weston and Sampson Engineers. I hope you can see me and hear me.
We can.
And I have with me both Eric McLean and Dale Myers from Ace Solar and the specific purpose entity Alliance Newbury LLC, which is set up to develop this project. They're both here to answer questions, but I'll go through the project and the application, which is for a special permit site plan approval. I know that last month the application was submitted and you voted to have this public hearing. That Martha did help and get the public notices mailed out on behalf of the applicant, and we appreciate that. Just by way of background, so that you're aware, this project is the origins come from an RFP that the town issued in 2017, looking for a developer to help it build a solar project on its closed landfill. And so Ace Solar submitted, we were part of that team. Just for disclosure, Eric McLean and I used to work together here at Weston and Sampson. Eric is a very competent civil engineer that grew up doing landfill work for Weston and Sampson. He's also a combat veteran of the Marine Corps, and now he's a successful solar developer, and he asks his old friends from time to time to help him because he's so busy building successful projects around Massachusetts and this country. So we appreciate that. Weston and Sampson, for those that may not know, we've been around since 1899. We're largely public sector engineers for cities and towns. Fill in the blank in Massachusetts and New England. We've been helping public and private projects like this be developed since about 2007. We have been the engineer of record on about 125 projects that total about 270 megawatts. Most of that is in New England and Massachusetts, and they range anywhere from 3 kW to 15 megawatts, including 32 closed landfills. Many of those projects we built with Eric and his company, but also on compost facilities, some Superfund contaminated sites. The average project size that we've been involved with is about 2.3 megawatts. And these landfills range from coal ash landfills to municipal solid waste, construction, demolition debris, compost facilities with both active and passive leachate systems, gas collection systems, and a variety of different capping designs. And so we've seen a lot out there, but we know that every site is unique and different. In the town of Newbury's transfer station is different than any other project that we've touched. I happen to frequent this because it's close to my house, and I go to the transfer station probably 10 times a year to get rid of cardboard and use the transfer station that is there. For those that know the landfill, it has 2 disposal cells. This area of the arrays would occupy about 1.7 acres on the larger of the 2 cells and about 0.6 acres all on the south facing slope of these disposal mounds. Generally, the wiring from the solar panels, everything is above grade to the greatest extent possible. And that's for safety reasons, to keep any of the electrical equipment separated from any potentially hazardous atmospheres that are generated when municipal solid waste decomposes and generates methane gas. And so you don't want methane gas in proximity to any electrical equipment. So we take care to keep those separated. And this design is no different than the other landfills that have been built and are operating in Massachusetts. The DC cable trays run above the landfill surface to a collection area to a central equipment compound where they will transition from underground on top of the closed cap to some overhead pole lines and then be brought out to the National Grid distribution system that runs along Boston Road. For those folks that know the history, waste has been disposed at this site since the 1950s. It's a 27-acre parcel. There are technically 2 separate cells, and there's a little bit of a unique history, I think, with some historical waste mining activities that the town implemented in the early 1990s, aimed at reclaiming space by mining and doing some volume reduction techniques. And I don't know the history, I wasn't involved with it, but reading some of the files that are available through the DEP, that mining activity led to the development of that smaller western waste disposal cell that was constructed with a bottom liner and a leachate collection system. And it also has a little bit of interconnected pipe work for some of the passive vents that eliminate the gas through the top of the landfill. Both waste disposal areas were closed with an engineered capping system that was designed by CDM on behalf of the town. It has a very standard 6-inch gas venting layer, a textured 40 mil high density polyethylene liner, 12 inches of a sand drainage layer, and 8 inches of a vegetative support layer. So basically you have a plastic membrane that covers the waste and about 20 inches of sand and grass above it to cap that landfill. And we have done some work back in March of 2020 when we first were awarded this project to investigate to make sure that the integrity of the cap and the liner thicknesses were as they were reported, because sometimes things change over time. And so it's a standard practice to sort of do hand dug little test pits around to verify cap thickness and the materials that are out there. And it's very much as reported by CDM closure assessment documents. Just in general, I'm going to be mindful of the time and try not to get into too much detail, Mr. Chairman, but the landfill is near the Little River. It feeds the Parker River. It's mapped as an area of critical environmental concern for the wetlands that's adjacent to it. However, all of the work that we're doing is all on previously disturbed, developed areas of the site. The project is going to utilize an existing drainage system, which in our opinion, we've seen a lot of landfills, and I would tell you that I would consider it very robust, very stable, and an adequately functioning system. The town does a pretty good job from my observations of maintaining that cap. From time to time, some woody vegetation appears in some of the drainage swales. That's not uncommon, but from a practical standpoint, having seen 50 landfills in Massachusetts, You guys do a good job of keeping up your facility out there, consistent with your permit requirements. There was a couple of post-closure use permits filed in the past by CDM. The town most recently built a small firing range on the south access road. The transfer station itself has moved from where the highway department laydown yard was to where it is now. Again, I go there a lot, so I'm very familiar with it, and I'm sure most of you are too. When we filed an application, we looked at things. A lot of the good landfills in Massachusetts already have solar on them, and so when Eric and his team looked at this, you guys have a relatively small and kind of a steep landfill. And so when we look at it as solid waste engineers, we're like, yeah, you can do something, but not a lot there, because of the size is not that big, and the slopes are admittedly a little bit of a challenge. But like I said, a lot of the good sites out there have already been taken, and so the pickings are getting slimmer to develop projects like this. So when we looked at it, we had to make sure that there was an adequate factor of safety against any sliding or instability that might be caused by building this solar array on top of the membrane liner and the engineered cap. And so through that analysis, we do some veneer slope stability calculations, and we look at the drainage system and found that we needed to supplement that 20-inch average layer needed to be beefed up a little bit. And then we also needed to take 18% slopes and lessen them to about 15% to keep the ballast blocks from sliding down the landfill. And so they're subtle changes. And we would also supplement that drainage with some cross slope panel piping to help convey the water off of the cap during some of the heavier rainstorms. The project basically involves adding some dense grade and crushed stone to accomplish those minor changes in slope. And again, to get the ballast blocks from an 18 to a 15 degrees to minimize that potential for sliding. Erosion and sediment control, largely the landfill is, like I said earlier, very stable. The grass and the vegetation is an erosion protection measure. And we're going to be only adding some enhancements, again, through some panel piping to get some excess water out and cover the landfill with some stone, which is also an armament, a lot like the riprap slopes that already exist out there. That will also minimize erosion and sedimentation during and after construction. We'll use the typical compost filter tubes wherever those need to be placed if there's larger areas that are disturbed during construction. But the idea is to get all the water to go to the existing drainage system. And so with the other permits and jurisdictional reviews, just to go over, a notice of intent was filed with the Newbury Conservation Commission, and it has a DEP number 051139 that was filed back in October of 2020. We have filed on behalf of the applicant a post-closure use permit with the DEP. It has a tracking number of 20-SW360009. It was filed electronically in May of this year after having a meeting with the town and the DEP in January of this year, where we had talked about the paper submittal that we had filed. And part of that permit application includes the EPA's HELP model, which HELP is an acronym for the hydraulic performance of landfill. And again, it contained that veneer stability calculations, reviewed the test pits. We had done some shear testing of some samples of the liner that we had collected to look at the friction angle between the liner and the angle of the soils to measure that. And we have done a stormwater report in accordance with the Mass Stormwater Handbook. We have also filed with the Mass Historic Commission a project notification form back in May of 2020, where they responded that there are no historical impacts. Similarly, the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species request was filed. There's a tracking number 20-39 399, where no mapped habitats were identified at the site to be developed for solar. As I said, one of the first things that Eric and his team did after award by the town was to file an interconnection application with Grid. And I believe that they have a fully executed service agreement with that local utility, which is necessary to get a statement of qualification with the Department of Energy Resources to get this thing properly energized and recognized as a solar generation unit. Service will be brought in, as I said before, along a pole line that's along Boston Road. It'll come around the southwest area of the transfer station to the perimeter to the southwest access gate. And then there'll be a couple of poles that are brought in to the south side of the landfill and connected to the utility pad area. In general, the solar arrays, the larger of the two areas is about 73,000 square feet. As I said, about 1.67 acres in total. The smaller area is 27,000 square feet and contains just over a half an acre. The installed capacity, as was read in the notice, is about 582 kW of DC capacity. That's about 1,456 400-watt modules, and they'll be installed on concrete blocks that are attached to metal racking and wrap around the south-facing slopes at different tilt angles and azimuths. The plan set, along with the other information that we filed with you folks, consists of 12 sheets, including the cover sheet, which have been revised anywhere from 2 to 4 times, depending on the different questions that were asked by the different authorities having jurisdiction, excluding some of the recent comments that have come back just today and yesterday from both the fire department and other jurisdictions that the peer reviewer had made some comments that we've received, but haven't had a time to address in any formal way. With that, I'd like to just pause and stop and turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, to see if there's any questions thus far before maybe we bring up a site plan and walk through some of the details of the project.
So I think it'd be helpful, yeah, if you could just probably pop up on the screen some renderings of drawings, just so that the board members could understand the different arrays, the 2 different arrays that will be placed. And Martha, I think you've done some screen sharing. Yes. Okay, great.
Let me see if there's if I have to request that. I apologize.
No, you should be all set to screen share.
Okay. I like to share pictures a lot too, but basically this plan set, and again, I apologize. I work for an engineering company, but I'm technically a geologist, and engineers love to cram a lot of information in tiny little prints and fonts to make sure that they don't miss anything. And I struggle with it to read it. One, because I'm getting older and my eyesight's not as good. So I'll zoom in and try not to move too fast. But I think that you all know where this project is. And the clarity and the resolution on these images, if they're not clear enough, I like to jump to a Google Earth view. One, because it's a little bit more updated than the Mass GIS data layers that we pull and get our sources from. But in general, I'm going to use this cover sheet to show you in red is the outline of the 27 acres. This is the larger of the 2 waste disposal areas. This has a liner on the top of it, but not the bottom. And this smaller cell has a liner on the top and the bottom. It has an old leachate collection system, and both have passive gas venting systems. And there's also some existing drainage systems within this within the surface that have basically grass swales that help direct stormwater to some downshoots. In between these 2 cells, there is not a liner, and the water is conveyed south into the larger wetland that feeds into the river system that you see on the screen. I'm going to skip to C205 and see if I can pull up the plan that is entitled, I'm just going to have to look at it. This is the proposed final cover plan. And so what you see outlined with this pattern that's designed to look like gravel is basically going to be a gravel cover. So essentially what you see out there, which right now is grass, will have some panel piping. There's probably, I think, upwards of 2,000 linear feet of panel piping that gets installed that will help channel the water over to these riprap downshoots so that it can be conveyed out to the wetland. The gravel is being brought in again to add a little bit of thickness to the sand drainage layer so that we don't exceed any more than 50% saturation during a 100-year storm event. And then that keeps our factor of safety for sliding to a reasonable number. Right now it's at a 1.2, and with the improvements that we're going to do with the drainage, it'll move that factor of safety up to a 1.4. And we're confident that this will keep the integrity of the existing drainage system and that the system's not going to slide off. And so if I move next to the next sheet page shows where the solar panels will end up being. Each one of these tables represents a series of ballast blocks and solar panels that are connected together. The lines that are formed with E are all above ground cable trays that collectively will be brought down to one central equipment pad area on the corner of the smaller of the two cells. There'll be what is in our vernacular, it's an above ground conduit that's going to be placed on top of the landfill and covered with more fill to get it across the service road to some overhead wires that will go out to a pole line. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and try not to move too much. But these black dots represent the overhead wires that come out over to Boston Road and connect it to the existing distribution system. If I was to, I'm going to see if I can click over and show you, this is, if this is a little clearer, this is a Google Earth image that is October of this year that shows how nicely manicured and kept you guys keep this landfill, but you can see some of the existing drainage features quite clearly from this vantage point. These are the riprap downshoots. In between here is a drainage swale. There's no liner. The liner closely follows, the limits of the landfill for each one of these cells, and this is where the pole line will come in around the south side of the transfer station. The overhead lines will then it'll span about 200 feet, and there'll be 1 to 2 poles that get it just to the northeast of your existing leachate collection tank and manhole system, which I'm not sure if that's even in use anymore. But the equipment pad will be down in this corner here.
So Steve, I think the
Sure.
Google Earth image that you're showing us, we're not seeing.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
still saying C206.
Okay, yeah, let me make sure. Screen sharing, new share, Google Earth. Share, see if that shows up.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have just traced in a line that mimics the leasehold area that ACE Solar would occupy, and so these are the south facing slopes. This is the area that would look different. It would convert from grass. Initially, everything would look like a gravel driveway for all practical purposes. There's a little bit of dense grade material, about 4 to 6 inches, that gets put down to do the shaping and grading and changing of the slopes to get those ballast blocks to sit a little more level than they would ordinarily. And then the whole thing gets like an icing of 1.5 inch stone over it that initially will look much different than it does from the air after it's built. And it'll gradually fill in with vegetation over time, which is what would happen anyway. But it's to get an extra thickness that we need by calculation, just to demonstrate that we've got compliance on the stormwater side of things. And what I was showing before is that the limits of this nicely mowed area, as you see my hand, this basically follows the limits of the liner. So this smaller of the two cells has a liner that's not connected in any way to the liner on the larger cell. And the liner for the larger cell wraps around, it comes up over here and then follows the contours around. The existing access road to where the highway department would access to the north of it, this is where the old transfer station used to be, would come in and you can see the well-traveled path back to the police firing range. Has a small structure here that they permitted in 2015. And then this road continues on and deposits you out into the transfer station through this southwest access gate. Only right now, you know, the road would technically be blocked by the firing range. If you were to try to drive through here, you could do it in a pickup truck to drive around here, but you wouldn't do it in any vehicle that's much larger than that. And if I change to show some photographs, I probably have to do one more new screen share and show you just these are some photographs. Not everyone goes to their town dump, but this is that structure that I was just showing you is the firing range. It's built of just concrete blocks on three sides with sand as a backstop and a shed roof. And I'm pretty sure that just the town police, they do their firing recertifications here. There is a drainage structure. You can see gas vents. I'm going to see if I can toggle through a few pictures just so that everyone, I have to move my viewing panel here a little bit. And tell me if you see the pictures changing, just to give you an idea.
Yeah, they're changing.
This is looking back. There's a picnic table. This is that access road. This is the north cell. This gives you a good idea of what the width of the existing access road is. That has overgrown with a little bit of grass, but the side slopes that we're talking about here. This is me and a geotech engineer back in March of 2020 when we hand dug some test pits to verify the liner thickness. These are the typical passive vent systems that landfill gas is allowed to escape from. This is standing on the larger mound, looking back towards the transfer station at the smaller mound. These are the existing drainage swales. As water comes down this, they will collect and it spirals around and comes down to these riprap downshoots that by gravity go out to the wetland to the south. I'll go kind of quickly through these pictures just because it's me standing in the place, and we were doing measurements to see what the average depth of cover. This is down to that flexible membrane liner. This you see at the bottom of the shovel is 22 inches. The average of about 20 holes that we dug was 20 inches. And so the cover system is exactly as it was reported to be. It's shown no signs of any excessive erosions or wear and tear. This is the typical type of a drainage swale. And again, the design calls for the solar array to be set back 10 feet from any landfill gas vent that you see. These are again taken strategically just to give you an idea of what the profile is. This is an old abandoned trailer that's at the corner. The police firing range is just to my right off of this picture. These are again just measurements of thickness. Some of these are kind of boring, but they were taken for a reason to make sure I knew how deep it was in each location. This is the area moving north and off the south access road. This is that old abandoned construction trailer. These are the typical vents. This is the firing range. This is the width. That picnic table looking at the south side of the landfill. More measurements. This is one area at the edge of the liner system where it is folded under a trench, an anchor trench, and it happened to be doubled up. So this is a sample that we took of the liner, took it to the laboratory and looked at what the friction angle was between that liner and the sand. When we did a little bit of research, this liner is not manufactured anymore, but we found a landfill liner company that makes a product that closely resembles this. And this company, these landfill liner installers are are people that we identify that just in case, on the off chance that the liner is punctured during construction, that we have a contractor on hand to come out and do any repairs to the liner. And those don't happen very often, but just in case, we had to be able to match that liner in order to fix it if we have to. These are, this is the southwest access gate to the corner of the transfer station. This is where you come in and pay to dump your trash. This is the typical riprap slope that leads down into the existing wetland, and gives you an idea of what the width and the condition of the gates are there. As I said, from our perspective, this facility is in great shape from a landfill. This is an area at the small south mound looking up, and this is where the solar array would go, as it was depicted. These are the slopes upon which it'll be built. This is that access road where the pole line will come in. The equipment pad is in between these two cells, about right where my cursor is. That's the wetlands and the Parker River beyond the transfer station. You can see the distribution lines in the background that are running along Boston Road. And again, just some more pictures to give you what the typical, this is in between the two landfills. This is looking south from the large mound to the smaller of the two. No, I'm sorry, the other way around. I'm on the small mound looking north. This is Boston Road. Transfer station, and I think that kind of concludes the visual tour of the landfill. And I'm happy to put the maps back up, Mr. Chairman, if there are any more questions that the board might have about the project.
Sure. Let me just run through the board members and see if there are any initial questions at this point. Larry, I'm sorry, George, do you have any initial questions?
Not any particular questions. I know we've had the town engineer do a extensive letter, and I haven't seen any result yet, but I would be interested too. I think it's a very good plan. I'd love to see it work right away.
Wonderful. Thank you, George. Woody, any questions at this time?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. Leslie, do you have any questions at this time?
No, I don't have any questions. Great presentation.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Mary, do you have any questions at this time?
Well, honestly, I wouldn't know where to begin, but I would like to ask for a working audience definition of photovoltaic. An amazing concept.
I'm sorry, Mary, you got a little bit broken up there.
Oh, okay. I would love to hear a definition.
The
So,
photovoltaic,
I'm sorry, Mary. So Mary, I'm gonna have you just turn off your camera for a second and see if we can get your question. Can I do that?
Because it's a very important issue.
Mary, I'm unfortunately, I couldn't catch any of that question.
That's okay. I just got a notice on my computer saying that there's a connection problem. So apologize. It's not important. I just want a definition of photovoltaics.
So Mr. Chairman, I'll try and take that as a geologist. Dale Myers is he's an electrical engineer, but it's basically solar photovoltaics is just the process by which we take light energy from the sun and convert it to electrical energy. And it's basically by
store it.
I'm sorry.
You have to have a place to store it.
So in this instance, we don't. So solar and electrical energy, all forms of electrical energy are instantaneous commodities. And so any energy that's made while this is in operation, generally it's daylight hours. I like to think of it between peak tanning hours, whenever the sun is up and there's enough sun to energize the inverters, electricity will start to flow and it will go to the grid, and those electrons will get used by the nearest source that is using electricity. When the sun goes down, this system will shut off. This system does not have any storage component associated with it. The
Okay.
vintage of this one doesn't have battery storage like some of the newer projects are mandated. If they're over a certain size and threshold, they would have a battery component connected to them, but this one does not.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Sure.
So Steve, as a geologist, you did very good with that electrical explanation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Martha, do you have any written comments from town departments that we should be aware of?
There are a couple, but before we go to that, I'm just wondering whether Steve might be able to show the section with the ballast block sitting on, on the slope, I think, and the gravel. I think that might help
Sure.
everybody understand a little bit
So
better.
hopefully you have the cross section from sheet C502 here.
Yes.
So this is the existing, there's the 40 mil textured HDPE liner. Above that, there's about 20 inches, 12 inches of coarse sand, then some topsoil. And so we put down this layer. It says 4-inch minimum compacted Mass DOT graded crushed stone for subbase, and then 6-inch, 1.5-inch compacted crushed stone above that. And you can see that what the idea is that we're changing this slope just a few degrees so that this ballast block is within its sliding limits. And again, we're talking about going from 15 to 18 degrees. And that's where this will get accomplished. And then this ballast block will have a 15 degrees tilt to it. And that'll be done in the field. They'll simply use a digital level to make sure that they're within the specs for the racking equipment. And then these concrete blocks, there's a note on this drawing that shows what the average ballast block size would be in order to hold up these individual tables of panels that are all connected together. So what ends up happening is the stone that we're going to place over it, it'll be almost imperceptible except to the people building it, that the lower edge of this lip, and I'm going to try and zoom in just a little bit here for you, is that you can see that this has got a little bit more fill on the down slope side than the upslope side from the existing topsoil up. And again, it serves two purposes. One, to reduce that friction angle just a little bit, and then it also increases the thickness above this flexible membrane liner so that we never exceed more than 50% saturation. When it rains, the further upslope you are, the less the thickness of saturation will be. But as the water moves down slope and starts to soak and percolate in, the water will start to collect above this liner, and we never want to see it more than halfway up, just to minimize the potential that mass can then slide down. As you can imagine, if you had it fully saturated and you had a little earthquake, you could get, the side of a lined landfill to slide down the slope. I've been around enough landfills to have seen that happen in other areas, and we want to prevent that to the greatest extent possible from happening here.
Thank you, Martha. Does that answer that question?
Yes, Yes, I just thought it would be helpful for the board members to see this. I think it helps understand the support system.
And nothing is being penetrated into the liner at all. This is all on top of the liner, Steve.
Yeah, I'll show you. There's one other photograph that I'd like. I'm gonna switch, I think, to one other screen share that I have some photographs that I think would be important that kind of show it. Let me see if I think I have them up. So let me share this. If you see, this is a photograph from a certification report that we did as part of our due diligence and file review. We have a landfill engineering group. As I told you, Eric McLean used to be here and part of that group. He's a quite competent landfill engineer, whether he admits it or not. But this is a similar landfill with a similar thickness of a cap. You can see this gentleman has dug a shallow trench with the aid of a smooth tooth excavation piece of equipment, and he's doing the last few inches with a shovel by hand. And the depth is about the same cover here. And if you notice, this trench goes cross slope and down the landfill. In the next picture, you see the drainage pipe. This is what we call panel piping. It's generally flat, but will help promote the drainage. And so we will dig some of this panel piping into the top of the landfill above the flexible membrane liner. And then it gets backfilled with the same sand that comes out of this hole. And then on top of that, there'll be some added fill brought in to do the final shaping and grading around all of these ballast blocks. And by virtue of the fact that the ballast blocks, the spacing on them will be such that it'll eventually look like a gravel cover over every part of what I showed as the leasehold or the array area on top of that landfill. And then probably within 3 to 5 years, a lot of the natural grasses that were there will start to fill in. And eventually the grass and the vegetation will take back over to where you won't see the gravel anymore. But it's a fairly common practice. We have worked with developers, and I don't know if any of Eric's projects fall into this category, where they've stripped all of the vegetation off the top of the landfill and put 4 inches of gravel down as a way to try and keep the vegetation at bay long enough to justify the expense of bringing the gravel in versus the expense of cutting the grass around the array after it's already been installed, which sometimes is a little bit difficult. As a landfill owner and operator, you want to keep woody vegetation from growing. The grasses that are planted here are designed to have a fairly shallow root system that doesn't grow in and start to penetrate that flexible membrane liner. So it's why you shouldn't ever see trees growing on a landfill. Most landfill owners will keep any woody vegetation to a minimum and have to pull them out every couple of years to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Martha, so now I'm going to go back to you to ask you, were there any written comments that we've received from department or boards?
Yes, we received a letter from the fire department, which came in yesterday. And I think one of the issues that was brought up is access through the site for fire trucks. And I did have a discussion with Eric McLean this morning about the fact that is actually outside of their leasehold area. And as Steve said earlier, the shooting range is actually sort of on part of the access road that goes through the site. So this is something that we will be trying to set up a meeting to discuss in-house to deal with those comments. I think the rest of them, Eric seemed to feel that they could easily be addressed. The other letter that we received this morning, as Steve mentioned, were the comments from the first round of review comments from Joe Sirwatka. So, the applicant has not had any time to address those either in writing or by revisions. So, those would probably be submitted for a follow-up session of the public hearing.
Okay.
And we've gotten, the Board of Health just wanted to confirm that there would be no penetration of the membrane, which there is not intended to be. I have a few preliminary questions from James Surratt, DPW director, but nothing in writing from him yet. So there may be some comments to be addressed there. And I've received no public comments.
Okay. All right. So maybe we'll stop screen sharing for a moment, Steve.
Sure.
And at this time, let me ask if there's any individuals from the public that would like to address the board at this time. Okay, Mike, you get to identify yourself and your address. Thanks. And unmute.
I'm Mike Doyle. Steve, I was selectman when back in 2001 to 2004, when we put this together, the landfill. And back then we had pumped, there was 2 tanks that we had to have pumped every 15 days. And if we had rain, are those gone? It's like, I never knew what, I kind of lost track of what happened there. But the DEP insisted that all the rain that came through was collected and then treated as wastewater, which cost the town a lot of money back then. And I was wondering what that status was. Is that over?
I think it is, through the chair, to answer that question. When we reviewed the file, we did find that leachate collection system that you mentioned. We know that there's a tank there. We know the manhole, but we didn't find any evidence that leachate collection system is still active.
Oh, I guess it was the biggest waste of money going because it was clean. It was really clean water because it had been, but the DEP insisted on doing it for like at least 3 years. And I didn't know if with this new system, with more rain coming down, if there's going to be any kind of a problem and if DEP had been approached at all.
Yeah, so from my understanding, like both of the closed cells have covers over them, and that does minimize any leachate. So, and so there's no longer, you think of the landfill as like a tea bag, and when water and rain percolates through it, it comes out and it's not very nice liquid. Having been inside of leachate collection systems personally, assessing flow rates, and we do this at other nearby. There's one in Amesbury that we used to maintain the leachate collection system and pump it out regularly. But the caps that are on top of them are intended to keep water from flowing through them anymore. And so that system might have been in operation. There was only a leachate system on the smaller of those two
Right,
cells.
it was only a small side.
Yeah, and I found nothing in the file that told me that it's active and being managed in any way. And it could just be, if there's any liquid that's flowing through there, that it flows out through the stormwater system, because there is some piping that's attached there, but it's not abundantly clear to me that anything is going on with it.
Okay, I do have records. I save everything. If I find anything, I'll forward them on to you.
Sure. No,
Okay.
I'd appreciate it. Yeah,
Okay, thank you, Steve. Nice presentation.
thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else to speak in favor or in opposition to this project?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Leslie?
I just have a question. Could Steve give us a description of the gravel substance that's going to be used? Will it be a natural, or will it be basically the same kind of gravel that they are putting down, like say in driveway situations, that gets compacted after time?
Yeah, so, and I'll let Eric or Dale correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a dense grade material that is, like, as a geologist and a guy who does geotechnical work, it's dense grade, which has a variety. It's a well sorted, or I should say it's a well graded material that packs nice and tight on the bottom. And then on top of that, it's driveway gravel, all of uniform. So everything is the same size on top of that, so that it infiltrates water very well. It acts as an armament, and it will help minimize erosion from occurring as soon as they put it down there. And then eventually, like I said, the Mother Nature and grass will start to grow into that and tighten everything up. And the whole idea is to get thickness out of it and a leveling course. So initially, like, depending on where they source it from, I'm not sure where they're going to buy it from, but it'll be a purchase material that meets those engineering specs.
Similar to something that has been ripped up from other areas and then made into a gravel type of form to be a hard surface, to serve as a hard surface, so that vegetation has limited ways of penetrating it?
So not necessarily, like, so the vegetation will it's okay by design for it to fill in with vegetation later. The gravel is initially it'll be like I don't want to say it's granite, because I don't know if it's going to be granite or where the parent material is coming from. Eric or Dale, have you guys sourced out the fill yet?
No, Steve, it's a Mass Highway DOT specification. And excuse me, Mr. Chair, Eric McLean, Ace Solar, thank you for your time. It's a Mass DOT specification product. And I'll say that to Leslie's comment through the chair, I'll say the goal is to not make it look like a paved surface or have it be that. We need that engineering material there to serve the purpose to help stabilize the side slopes. So our goal is to have some vegetation come back, and it will come back good. It will not be compacted like a driveway is. It will not be, we have to use ground pressure equipment on top of the landfill. So there will be heavy equipment up there.
It'll be compacted enough that heavy equipment can travel over it.
Yeah, so I will say that I don't want to say we're using heavy equipment. It will look like heavy equipment, but it's called low ground pressure equipment, right? So it gives off while we're building this and through our application with the Mass DEP Solid Waste Division, we will ensure that when we're constructing this, we're doing everything we can to maintain the landfill capping as well. So it will look like a big piece of heavy equipment, but it's low ground pressure, which means it gives off less than 7 pounds per square inch of ground pressure. And so that gravel actually will not get super compacted. I don't want to say it won't get compacted at all, because simply walking on gravel can compact a little bit. But the goal is to not have it be a hard compacted driveway type material where water is just completely off and no vegetation can grow. The goal is that vegetation grows. It helps the side slopes. It helps slope stability. It helps evapotranspiration. It helps all of those things. So, we won't be able to seed it, but eventually growth will come back to it.
Yeah, it's 1.5 inch, like it's screened gravel. And it does sort of get keyed into place with maybe a small vibrating compactor just to stabilize it and key it in is the term that the geotech engineers would use. And again, that's just so that it holds its shape and holds the ballast blocks where we want them to stay.
And as far as natural storm drainage runoff, so it would go into the areas that you wanted to prevent it from overflowing into the.
Yeah, it's highly porous. We want water to flow through it, and it'll go into what you'll see in the plans are those cross slope panel piping that are staggered as you go down the hill, so that as water runs down the hill, soaks in, it hits those intercept trenches, and it helps facilitate funneling it out, and it daylights down those open riprap chutes where water, if it rained hard enough, you would see it flowing on the surface. But more often than not, you probably won't see anything flowing.
And again, Eric McLean, Mr. Chair, as far as surface water runoff, an analysis is done. There's an existing, the landfill itself is considered already a impervious area. So all water has to shed off of it. So the landfill has an existing stormwater system. And as Steve said earlier, it is very well maintained. And so we are not adding any water, and we are actually not increasing the time of concentration of the water runoff. So the existing landfill stormwater system is adequate to handle it. And that's, I believe it was, we gave that documents for both this permit and the DEP, we gave some of that. So.
Thanks for all your information. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Leslie. Any other questions from board members at this time? Okay, I don't see any. So I think we probably should think about scheduling a site walk. And with that in mind, we're probably also thinking about this coming back in January. And I just, so from a scheduling standpoint, Martha, do you think the 19th is going to give enough time for submittal response, or should I ask the applicant? Do you think the 19th will give you enough time for submittal responses to what you've received?
Yeah, I know that we just received them, but looking at the comments, it don't looks like any of those comments would take longer than that to address.
Okay. Is the 5th too short of a window and the 19th would be better for you?
Eric, I'll defer to you. I like the 19th
Okay.
better than the 5th, but I could do either.
Mr. Chair, the 19th is fine. We've got holidays coming up. There's 2 weeks doesn't make a difference. So
Okay, great. That'll just help us with scheduling a site walk. So with that said, let's just take a look at our calendars, folks. So we have until the 19th to do our site walk. We're looking today, we're at the 15th. Do we want to try to do this before the Christmas holiday or after the New Year's? I'm over to suggestion.
Doesn't
My
matter to me.
calendar is pretty full next week going into the Christmas holiday.
Won't be
So-
here. so-
New Year's.
Okay, so let's look at the first week of January. So we will be having a planning board meeting on the 5th. Do we want to try to do it before the 5th? That would be a Monday or a Tuesday.
Tuesday again, I'm not available on Tuesday. It's the only day.
Okay, so that would leave us with a Monday, a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Does anyone else have any other conflicts? Okay, Martha, do you have any conflicts?
I'm just checking that right now. Not that I see during the day, no.
Okay, so the warmest part of the day is probably going to be between 11 and 2, I would think, something like that.
Yes.
So do we want to do a high noon on Monday, the 3rd? For sidewalk?
Sounds good to me.
That's good.
Oh, wonderful. Martha, how's that look for you?
I'm just checking again.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if Monday, the 3rd is actually the observed holiday. I didn't know if that made a difference.
That's right.
The 1st is a Saturday. I think Monday, the 3rd may be the observed holiday. for New
Okay,
Year's.
I'm going to turn to our town planner. Is that the holiday for the town?
It's actually a floating holiday for us. If New Year's Day were on Sunday, the 3rd would be the observed holiday, but since it's Saturday, it's not. So not an issue for us, but I don't know if it is for
The applicant?
Steve or Eric, the applicant.
Yeah, I believe it probably will be, and I just want to make sure we could do it. I apologize.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I don't have to be there. Someone from my company can, but I'm out of town on the 3rd and the 4th and back on the 5th. And I'm flexible, but we have other people that can show up there if, so don't let me be the deciding factor to move something.
Mr. Chair, I am away coming back the 3rd. I may be able to make it, but I prefer if we could push it.
Okay. Do we want to look at the 5th then, folks? That's a Wednesday.
Right, or how about, since we have a meeting that day, how about the 6th?
Okay, let's look at the 6th, which is a Thursday. The 6th of January, folks, at 12 o'clock. Let's go around and check with the board. How does that look for you, George?
Fine.
Okay, Woody?
That's fine.
Okay, Leslie?
Looks good.
Okay, Mary?
Yes, fine.
Oh, okay, Martha?
That's fine for me. I'm just, given the time of year, we might want to consider a rain date or a snow date.
No date?
No day.
But, and if the continuance isn't until the 19th, we could also, if it doesn't work on the 6th, we could reschedule for the following week.
Okay, all right. So do you want to have a snow date now, or do we want to be optimistic and think that we're going to have a nice 54-degree temperate day?
I go for the 54-degree day.
Okay, then let's go with the 6th of January, 12 o'clock for our sidewalk.
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, that being the case, let's see about doing a continuation of this public hearing to the 19th of January. We could have it to follow our 7:15 slot. I entertain a motion.
Motion to
Motion to
continue this.
continue.
Okay, I think Woody got it. And Leslie, do you want to second that?
I will, yes.
Beautiful. Okay, discussion on the motion. Discussion, George.
None.
Thank you. Discussion, Woody.
None.
Discussion, Leslie.
None.
Discussion, Mary.
No,
Wonderful. How do you vote, George?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Leslie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mary, how do you feel?
yes.
Wonderful. Chairs in favor as well. Okay, Martha, I think that takes care of it. And Steve and Eric, I guess we will see you on the sidewalk and back for our public hearing continuation on the 19th.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate the
Thank you, Steve.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, Martha, I see new business 105 High Road OSRD proposed performance guarantee. Do you want to give a little introduction, then maybe turn it over to Brian?
Yeah, I think I'll turn it over to Brian pretty quickly, but
All right. Okay, Brian, right to you then.
Oh, that was very quick.
How's that for quick?
Good evening, everyone, and hello. So just a nutshell background, as you know, one of the conditions of your OSRD special permit requires a performance guarantee. Much like a subdivision or your site plan approvals that you're used to, typically the performance guarantee is something that comes first in order. In fact, if it's a subdivision, it has to be provided before you endorse the plan itself. So this is something that the applicant generally provides early on in the process to ensure that the essential infrastructure is secured for our purposes. So there's been some interaction with the applicant's counsel and myself and Ms. Taylor about the form of surety, and at different points, it took different forms. However, I think the applicant has settled on a covenant now, which we looked at a couple of different revisions to that covenant. I think we now have one that Ms. Taylor and I have both seen and have approved as to form. I hope you all have a copy of that. I was provided maybe late afternoon with a version of that has been executed not only by the LLC that owns the property, but there is a signature for the bank as well, acknowledging that our covenant is going to be senior. Little bit of a difference with this covenant than maybe the ones you're used to, because this is not a subdivision, so there aren't lots to release. There is a lot because this is a condominium development. So this covenant is structured a little bit differently. It governs the entire lot, and it actually forbids the applicant from obtaining a building permit. So until the essential infrastructure is completed, or the applicant approaches the board and seeks to substitute this covenant for another form of performance guarantee that the board finds sufficient and acceptable, then this covenant will protect against any what I call, vertical construction, no building permits. So all the infrastructure has to be in and completed before you could consider releasing the covenant. So that's essentially the nutshell version of what's in front of you tonight.
And this has been vetted and agreed upon, if I understand correctly?
I've reviewed it and approved it as the form. I'll let Martha speak for herself, but I think after reviewing it, a couple different versions were circulated. I think we're there.
Okay.
so there is one minor thing that has been noted, which is the address of the applicant is down there is 3 Graff Road, Newbury. It's actually Newburyport. So I didn't catch that earlier, but Mr. Morse caught that.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
All right, let me see if there's any questions from board members with regards to this. George, any other questions or comments?
I don't.
Okay, thank you, sir. Woody?
No questions.
Okay, Leslie?
None.
Okay, Mary?
No questions.
All right, then I guess I would ask for a motion to approve the proposed performance covenant.
So moved.
To approve.
Thank you, George. We have a motion, and Leslie, is that a second?
It is.
Wonderful. Discussion on the motion, George.
None.
Discussion, Woody?
None.
Discussion, Leslie?
None.
Discussion, Mary?
Nope.
Great. George, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Woody, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Leslie, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Mary, how do you feel about the motion?
Yes.
Wonderful. The chair is in favor as well. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to do with this, Martha?
I believe that is, I think that's all.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you very much, councils. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you. On the new business, we see FY 2023 planning board budget. Martha, do you want to comment on this at all?
Yes, we are actually in the process of preparing, providing our budgets to the town administrator. They're due next Monday.
Okay.
And typically, I'll go through it and review it with the chair. Looking at it right now, it seems like probably doing a level funded budget will probably be very close to it. There are a couple of things that have changed. We have a line item in there for public hearing notices, and the Daily News has raised its rate per column inch. So that's something that will go up slightly.
Okay.
And there will be a standard cost of living adjustment. MVPC, the only other thing that might change is Merrimack Valley Planning Commission is looking at some alternatives for their aerial photography, pictometry. And there might be some impact on that because that's a budget that's under our jurisdiction. So.
All right, so this will then go to our town administrator for submission, is that right?
Right, and then she'll review it along with all the other budget requests and
Right, well, very good. So then I think we'll let that process percolate along its course. Are there any questions from board members? George?
No.
Great. Woody?
No.
Okay, Leslie?
No.
Mary?
No.
Okay, great. Continuing on, we have old business 15 Coleman Road. We have a request for release of lot 1 and 8 on performance covenant. We have a follow-up discussion with regards to draft legal documents for the 15 Coleman Road, Fieldstone Lane OSRD. With regards to the declaration of the restricted covenants and easements, as well as the declaration of the HOA. Martha, do you want to start this discussion?
Well, a couple things. We did receive the request for release of lots 1 and 8. In November, they were discussed at the November 17th meeting. I think one of the concerns at the time was that the septic system was not complete. And my understanding, both from our health director and also from Tom, is that there are still some components missing. So the as-built has not been submitted. The certificate of completion has not yet been.
Right. Okay.
Also.
So we don't have the complete certificate, and the construction's not done. Okay. So I think Tom, how are you, Tom?
Good, Peter.
Good. So I think we discussed last time that we wouldn't be able to release the lots until we had the certificate done, and it sounds like there's still some construction to take place.
Yeah, right. If I could, would you like me to elaborate on this just a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. The two requests that we have in, one is to have the lots released, but that's kind of I guess subordinate to the to having the HOA and covenants consented to, which hopefully we can make progress on that tonight pursuant to the Historic Commission decision the other night to accept the fee in the Witchstone parcel. But I completely understand and agree that the lot releases for 1 and 8 can't happen. I was hoping, right now we have 2 issues with the septic system. The field is in and has been inspected and certified. The pump chamber is in, and we've run into a nasty knob of ledge where the tank, where the other tank has to go. We're working on that and waiting for the actual pumps. These are things that we can't do anything about. You know, the availability of materials is what it is. So we're waiting on the pumps in particular. Those will probably be a few weeks before they arrive. at that time, they'll be installed, and then we should have our certification then. I would like to ask the board if it's, I've done this, I've been able to manage this with municipalities in the past. If a conditioned release of those lots could happen pursuant to receipt of the Title V certification, just so that when we do actually get that completed, we don't have to necessarily come back to what might be an inconvenient time for another board meeting and go through that cycle again to have that decision or that authorization done. So I'd like to see if the request, if you feel it's reasonable to make the request to have that those releases authorized pursuant to and conditioned upon the receipt by staff of the Title V certificate.
So before we go there, Tom, so we still have to get through the HOA documents. And
Yes.
So maybe, does it make sense to do those at the same time? So we just do everything at once? Because I know that we made some, let me back up a little bit. Why don't you tell us first what took place? Unfortunately, Larry's not here tonight to report on what took place with the Historical Commission and the Fatherstone.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we had that request was made of the Historic Commission to see if they would vote to accept the fee and a parcel surrounding the Witchstone, which we had a relatively brief but informative discussion with them, and they voted unanimously to accept that. We've since prepared and submitted in draft form an A&R plan, which, Martha, I think you have electronically, maybe not in paper form yet, but that shows the proposed 10 by 20 foot area surrounding the Witchstone to be donated or granted in fee. So that was the outstanding item. At least my understanding was the outstanding item relative to the HOA and or covenant. And I think Brian felt that there was something that needed to be revised or considered or added to the HOA and or covenant pursuant to that determination. I'm not sure what that is. It's not something that I was charged with revising, but my understanding was that it needed to go back to Brian for some language pursuant to that. I don't know if that's been done or not.
Well, let me ask Martha first. Martha, what's your understanding at this time with this?
Yeah, my understanding is basically consistent with that. I did receive this morning a letter from the Historical Commission, basically confirming their vote and their support for going this route to have some portion of area. And I have received an electronic version of the draft A&R plan. I think we may need to talk about that a little bit more. I know originally the suggestion had been made a 20 by 20, and this is a 10 by 20, and it looks like it incorporates part of the roadway right of way as well as lot 7. So we may need to take a look at that a little bit more before it gets submitted formally to the board.
Okay.
And Attorney Winter had suggested that the two documents should be revisited once a decision had been made on the Witchstone, Fatherstone.
Okay, so the Historic Commission endorse the concept? So that being the case, that means that the town can then go forward. Brian, are you still there, Brian?
I am here.
Wonderful. So now that the Historical Commission has accepted the town can now go forward with incorporating this into our document?
Yes, assuming that's the direction we're all heading in, not just the Historical Commission, but the board.
Mhm.
Then we can revise the respective paragraphs in the documents to reflect that choice. So I can make that update.
Okay.
I think there were some other comments that I had in addition to that paragraph, and I don't know if that was discussed at the last meeting or needs to be, but at least we can take those documents to the next step.
Okay. since you're here, do you want to touch on your comments?
Yeah, I can pull them up if you think now's the time, but I think my comments were really questions back to the applicant. The applicant's team had, I think, taken the initial draft of the HOA and the covenant, and I had some questions back to them, and I don't know if my questions made it back to the author of those documents or not, but I was kind of waiting to hear their response.
Peter, could I jump in?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in between. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, I think I saw those comments, Brian, I saw through Peter, I saw those comments just before the last meeting, and I think I made the comment at the last meeting that for what it was worth at that time, that I thought the other changes were fine, and they were refinements as opposed to major changes to the document that I think just made it more clear. So I don't think we had any issues with any of those minor revisions.
Okay, so we just need to incorporate. Yes.
Oh, the only thing I wanted to comment on, Martha, I don't recall ever discussing a 20-foot deep parcel there. I recall only talking about 10 feet, but you know, what we were trying to do was provide a 10-foot perimeter around, completely around on all sides with the witch stone, and again, plenty of room for equipment or anything else that might need to be done.
Okay, I may be misremembering, but I thought you'd mentioned 20 by 20, so.
Okay. So it sounds like we just need a little bit more tweaking. Tom to agree with Brian to sign off on it, and then we can, I think, have that piece completed. And it doesn't sound like there's going to be much lifting to achieve that. Is that right, from what I'm hearing, Martha?
I think so, but I'd refer that back to Attorney Winter.
In terms of the drafting of the documents, I agree. This is not a big ticket item.
Okay.
I'd like to see if Peter, if I may, just if we can wrap those up at the next meeting, even if the lot releases don't happen. You know, there are a lot of subsequent reviews with our buyers, attorneys, and banks who need to look at those documents and have time to digest them. It would be great if we could get those for the next meeting so they can go on record and people can have an opportunity.
I completely agree.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see if we can get that task completed. And how far are we from having the septic completed, do you think, Tom?
Well, again, the two things, the ledge, we just ran into ledge. We had no ledge until this last component. It came out of no place. We've been hammering at it, and we may have to blast it out, but we certainly should have that tank in the next week. Is my expectation. The pumps, which are, you know, they're like all of us. We're all dealing with delivery of materials, whether it's Christmas gifts or furniture or whatever. We're waiting on pumps. We've been promised certain dates, which have already slipped. I'm hoping that I have those pumps within the next couple of weeks as well. And I would really like to have that wrapped up, you know, at the latest for the following meeting, you know, and have a certificate in front of you by the 19th.
Okay, this is on you, Tom. You get it done, and we'll get it off our plate on the 5th. How's that sound?
No, this is definitely on me, but on the rest of the world. But we're doing everything humanly possible, just constrained by the rest of the world right now. So okay. I appreciate the efforts and the patience with it.
All right. Well, we're glad that we had an opportunity to present this to the Historical Commission, and I think that's great. And Martha, do you have any other thoughts or comments before we conclude this piece of old business?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, cool. Hopefully we will see you back then, Tom, on the 5th, and we can have this towards and over the finish line.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate everything.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, all right. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Night.
Night, Tom. Thank you.
All
I
right.
think that concludes the matters I've been involved in. So
No, I think you need to stay to the end, Brian. I mean, if we have to stay to the end, I think.
I just want to, if you would appreciate that, I would. Absolutely would. But I wouldn't want to sign off without saying goodbye.
Yeah, I don't think, Martha, do you have any other need for our good attorney?
No, I don't. Thanks.
All right. All right, Brian, thank you very much and Happy New Year, sir.
And to all of you as well. Take care. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our proposed zoning amendments in our work group meetings. So we had 2 work groups that met last week with regards to revision of wireless communication and looking at inclusionary zoning bylaws. So I'll just try to give a summary. With regards to the wireless, we felt it'd be appropriate to reach back out to our consultant to fine tune his recommendations and to see if there are any modifications that we needed to look at. And Martha, we were at the conclusion of our meeting, that was one of our tasks. And how do we end up with that?
So I've gotten authorization to do that in terms of funding, so I'll need to get a fee, but that will be one of my things to do tomorrow.
Wonderful, wonderful. And of course, this has concerns with regards to public safety. So we think it's a very important component if we can get it in wrapped up within the next couple of weeks from our consultant, if it all works, so that we can get it for our bylaw modification. The second work group looked at inclusionary zoning components, and Emily, you're on, and so I'm going to have you probably chime in for a second, because Emily did a lot of work with regards to giving direction and information to the work group with regards to what other inclusionary zoning bylaws are. And I'll just try to summarize it, and Emily, you can direct comments that I make. So we're looking at communities that had anywhere from the inclusionary bylaws that were geared on size of the development, for lack of a better term, and what would be thresholds. And so one of the obstacles that, or not one of the obstacles, one of the concerns is whether we would have Martha, help me, a trust established or some other entity to facilitate that. So Emma, I just want you to kind of just do a kind of a quick synopsis of your matrix, just so the board can appreciate that, if you can. Uh-oh, I put you on the spot.
I don't have that in front of me, but
Okay.
I do. You want me to just do
Yeah.
the best I can from?
Yeah, or just a kind of an overview.
I guess as we talked about in the work meeting or the work group, as you just said, there was just depending on the size of the town and stuff, the threshold was different from like 3 lots to 7 lots, I think was the top. So it just depends on what, the size of the town or the city. And then from there, it's, a percentage of the size of the development. So most were around 10% or some are 25% would have to be affordable. And then the developers could choose how they wanted to, or you could provide it by building a affordable unit of whatever the percentage was. So, for example, we spoke about, what if our threshold was 4 and then the percentage was 25%. So one of the 4 would have to be affordable. If you had a fraction, there was different ways to provide for that depending on what the town chose. So like maybe it would have to be rounded up if it was a fraction always, or if it was below 0.5, it would be rounded down. And you could do a payment in lieu, but that's where the trust would come in, as you were talking about. You would need somewhere for those funds to be collected. And there was other options for how it could be provided, but we don't need to get into that unless you want me to.
No. Yeah.
So that's kind of those are like kind of the main, I guess. parts to it.
It was. And so again, the intention behind here is to try to stimulate the process of affordable housing within our community. And one way to do that would be going forward with based on lot size. So that's what our intention was of exploring this. Martha, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Not at this point. I mean, we have some homework to do. We were going to kind of look at other communities to see, you know, if there are mechanisms other than Affordable Housing Trust and a housing authority. But it seemed like for now, without those, maybe we're limited to actually requiring an affordable unit to be built. And I'll be reaching out to town council to see if there are any affordable inclusionary bylaws in addition to the ones that Emily looked at that might be good for us to review. You know, and I think everybody was going to go through the model bylaw that's on the smart growth toolkit as well.
Right. So I appreciate the two work groups working on this, and they'll be working a little bit more between now and our next meeting, and then reporting back to the board on that. Anybody have any comments from the work groups additional to what was just reported?
No.
Okay. Okay. October financial. I think I have to read something.
Right, that's actually, it was my mistake. It's the November financial.
November financial. Okay. George, you should have got me on that right away.
Well, at least it proves I read the first paragraph.
All right, let me see if I can pull it up. Where did I put it? Where did it go?
If you can, I've got it.
Yeah, could you?
I believe I can.
Thank you.
I just need to find it here.
Oh, wait a minute, maybe I can find it on this one.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Are you able to see that?
I am. Oh, boy, thanks. Planning Board Financial Report, November 2021 payroll and invoices authorized. Number one, payroll warrants for Planning Director and Planning Admin, PR 22-10 for pay period ending 11/6/21, PR 2111 for pay period ending 11/20/21. Planning Board expenses, invoices of Verizon Wireless, Planning Board iPad for 11/24/21, and peer review invoices from the escrow account for our peer review Joe's Walker for 217-221 High Road on 11/24/21. Thank you very much, Martha.
You are welcome.
Okay, Planning Director's report.
I think I actually don't have anything new to report on tonight.
Okay, beautiful. Liaison reports, Select Board, Leslie, what you got?
Well, Tracy did talk about our two workshops that we started, and with the hopes that we will be able to get it on the warrant for the Springtown meeting. And the IT responsibility for keeping up each board or commission's page on the town website will be up to the board itself. And it's going to roll over, so we have to update our own page on a regular basis. That's pretty much what pertained to us. Everything else was licensing and things of that nature.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you. ZBA, Larry's not here. Conservation, I unfortunately did not make the last meeting. Oh, Martha, ZBA, please tell us.
Yes, I can report on the ZBA. There was a special meeting last week on the 9th on two applications, one of which was the Pink House variance request. And so the ZBA reviewed the draft decision, which town council and I had worked on, and voted to grant the variance request and to approve the decision. So that's actually been signed as of today and should be filed tomorrow.
Okay, beautiful.
Right.
Thank you.
So, and there's a meeting, a ZBA meeting tomorrow night with two new applications, two new hearings that will open.
Okay. I'm going to go right back to you for MVPC.
MVPC, the next commissioners meeting is tomorrow, actually.
Okay, great. Meeting minutes. Where are we with our January 20th minutes.
So those were distributed last time, right, unfortunately, right before the meeting, so that was tabled until this meeting. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to review them.
Let me find out. George, an opportunity?
No,
Nope. Leslie? No. Woody?
I did actually, but
Thank you, Woody.
I read them.
Mary?
I actually scanned it, yes, and
All right. So I'm going to ask that we try to get those reviewed for our next meeting so that we can sign both the 20th and February 3rd. Okay,
okay, thanks.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Anything else this evening, Martha?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Anyone else have anything else?
motion to adjourn.
Thank you, George. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Wonderful. Discussion, George.
None.
Okay, discussion, Leslie.
Happy holidays.
Wonderful discussion,
Happy-
Woody.
None.
Mary, discussion.
It's a joy working with you guys, and I wish you all the best in the next week.
All right. So how do we vote, George?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Leslie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hey, yes, Mary, and I second your condolence, not your condolence, your wish and your
It's okay. I'll
Really?
take that.
yeah. And for everyone to have a wonderful holiday season and a wonderful New Year celebration. And it's a privilege to work with you all. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Merry, happy.
Thank you. Same
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Martha,
Good night,
thank you, everyone. Good night now. Thanks,
Good
Em.